Well, good morning. My name is Willie Lawson of The Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of FightbackMedia.com, 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 and FightbackMediaTV.com. We trust that you are well. You know, a lot of people are starting to wonder something. Why are they after Trump? And it isn't for a lot of the reasons that are being pushed on CNN and MSNBC and the Washington Post no. We've never seen anything like this before. They are aggressively trying to get this guy. And it isn't because he's a bad guy, necessarily. That ain't it. I got a couple of things that you should consider right after this. All right. Again, welcome. My name is Willie Lawson. You know, why are they after Trump? Why was this whole get Trump thing so huge? So much, in fact, that Alvin Bragg and others ran, and Fani, whatever her name is, Willis, down in Atlanta, ran for office on the basis that they were out to get Trump, that they would do whatever. They stake their entire political career on it. Why? And a lot of people are like, why? Because, hey, listen, when he was president, all the things that people were saying, all the experts were saying were going to happen, we were going to end up in a war with North Korea, and that would prompt World War III, and our economy would crash to the ground, which is really funny because during wartime, economies usually do this, which is why we're in so many wars sometimes. When the fact of the matter, there were no new fronts for 4 years in war. There were no new fronts in war. The economy seemed healthy in a lot of areas. Now, the revisionist history is saying that wasn't true necessarily, but it was true up until COVID. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of people don't believe that COVID was an organic happening in our culture. A lot of people believe that, well, COVID was something else, that it had a political purpose. Sorry, a lot of people, you may not like that, but a lot of people think that. So there may be other reasons why the left and the globalists are out to get Trump. Let me put these before you. Overall, the U.S. contributions to the United Nations have remained steady over the recent years, but the Trump administration had sought to pare down or completely eliminate the voluntary contributions to many UN programs, targeting peacekeeping operations and specialized agencies. Trump rejected the globalism of the United Nations and viewed certain programs as contradictory to his administration's agenda on Israel, abortion, and other policy areas. The Trump administration suspended all funding for the UN Population Fund. In 2017, after expanding a ban on U.S. contributions to organizations that perform or promote abortions as a method of family planning, the following year it reduced funding for the U.S. program on HIV/AIDS and the World Health Organization by about 30% and 20% respectively in 2020. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the administration announced the United States would withdraw from the WHO completely and cut funding further. For many agencies, especially those that depend on voluntary funding, cuts in the U.S. contributions can be painful. For example, the UN Agency on Palestinian Refugees. The UNRWA relied on the United States for about 1/3 of its budgets until the Trump administration halted contributions in 2018. The move led to the agency to lay off staff. Golly, they had to lay off staff. And slash its health, education, and food assistance. Experts say that the current pause on their funding could negatively impact the on-the-ground operations for the 2.2 million people in the Gaza Strip reliant on UN aid, reliant on U.S. aid. See, this is how they get you. They're reliant on UN aid. If 2.2 million people are going to be affected, They are relying on U.S. aid. They're relying on U.S. tax dollars, potentially worsening the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the region. Hamas is responsible for the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the region. Trump also tried to cut the U.S. peacekeeping forces by almost $500 million, $500 million, right? While Congress largely rejected the proposed cuts, why? It agreed in the 2017 to enforce a mandate cap on U.S. contributions, okay, to the UN Department of Peacekeeping Operations that had been waived since 2001. They just waive it. So, how critical is U.S. funding to the UN? You know, some people would say that it's probably not, well, it's not really that big a deal. Let me get my production screen. Not that big a deal, but I believe that it probably is. All right, as you can see on the screen, that the U.S. contributions represent a significant percentage of the entity's revenue. Explore the portion of the agency's total revenue that the United States provided in 2022. Well, WEP, half of the money. The United States gives more than half of the world to the World Food Program, $7.2 billion. That does not include. That it does to any other UN body. Half. To the AIDS program, 40%. To the refugee program, 30%. To the WHO's budget, the WHO, the WMO, the FAO, the ILO, all these organizations, 20%, 10% of the to UN Women. This is the problem. This is the problem that they have with Trump, because Trump is rejecting the globalism. Trump is rejecting the globalist organizations. That's what they're most afraid of. Isn't it interesting that Trump cut money that went to the people in Gaza? And this event broke out. Absolutely amazing. Now, the UN is there are 193 members of the United Nations. They're required to make payments to certain parts of the organization as a condition of membership. The amount each member must pay, known as its assessed contribution, varies widely and is determined by a very complex formula that none of us have access to, right? Varies widely and determined by that formula. That factors in the gross national product and all that kind of stuff, and population. These mandatory contributions help fund the United Nations regular budget, which covers administrative costs, of course, all the people who run this giant organization, who make millions doing nothing, as well as the peacekeeping operations. In 2023, the United Nations assessed the United States' share of the regular budget at 22%, and its share of the peacekeeping budget at 27%. However, the U.S. Congress caps contributions to the peacekeeping budget at 25%, leaving the United States in the arrears. Now, somehow we owe money. They say that we should be paying 27%. Why? Anyway, China and Japan, the next two largest economies by gross domestic product, have the second and third highest contributions respectively. Assessed dues also finance other UN bodies, including the International Atomic Energy Agency and back to the World Health Organization. Members may also make voluntary contributions. Many UN organizations, such as the United Nations Children's Fund or UNICEF, remember Trick or Treat for UNICEF? Remember that? No, not most of you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Anyway, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the World Food Program rely mainly on discretionary funding. We have given billions. As a matter of fact, the last time the United States contributed more than $18 billion to the United Nations in 2022. The most recent fiscal year with full data. About 17% of this total was assessed, and the rest was voluntary. That means 83% was voluntary of the $18 billion. The United States just gave it up. Gave up taxpayers' dollars to the UN. And what they're afraid of is that this isn't going to happen anymore. That if a Trump administration gets in, it's going to go back to, nope, UN, cut them, nope. We have veterans in the street who need housing, who need health care, who need mental health care. That money could be used, that money, especially the discretionary money, the money that they don't have to pay, can be used for something else. And that is what some of these leftists are deathly afraid of. That's why they freaked out when we got out of the Paris Accords. Because frankly, all the goals they had, the United States had already met most of them already, and was well ahead of other emerging countries or second world countries or even first world countries like China or Japan or India, for God's sakes. Filthy, filthy India. So that's something else to consider. All right. I got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. Remember that Project 2025 is a Heritage Foundation project, not part of the presidential campaign of Donald Trump. It bothers me that I have to, seem like I have to defend Donald Trump, and I'm not interested necessarily in defending Donald Trump. Let me look over to my production screen. Sorry. I'm going to pull that back over. There you go. But the truth's got to be told. And there are very few people on the left and in regular media that are the least bit interested in telling the truth, especially on social media. A bunch of people on social media, Harry Sisson and the rest of that ilk, all they're doing is regurgitating the lies. About what? About everything. I want people of every stripe to be able to hear the truth and be able to make their decisions based on what's real, not what is imagined and what's made up. Like I said, I got to get out of here, make room for somebody else and land this plane. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.